A dazzling silence filled the grand hall of the Emirate's most opulent palace, interrupted only by the sharp snap of the billionaire Sheikh's fingers, as his piercing gaze fixed on the unsolvable puzzle laid before him. 20 of the brightest minds had failed, and now the Sheikh's pride, swollen as the desert sun, threatened to crack beneath the weight of this insoluble mystery. His eyes flashed with a tempest of arrogance and disbelief. How could defeat taste so bitter where only victory had ever dwelled? Outside, the amber hues of the desert sunset stretched endlessly, the air heavy with the scent of burning frankincense and the subtle rustle of silken tapestries that adorned the marble columns. Jewels sparkled beneath the chandeliers, casting a shimmering glow that danced like fireflies across the polished floors. This was more than a palace. It was a kingdom of power, wealth, and unyielding dominance, and the Sheikh was its undisputed master. Inside, the billionaire Sheikh sat rigid, his regal robe brushing the floor like liquid gold. His dark eyes, sharp and calculating, betrayed a restlessness that no treasure could soothe. The puzzle had become an obsession, a challenge that threatened not just his intellect, but the very foundation of his identity. To admit failure was unthinkable. His breath hitched with the fraught anticipation of reclaiming what had been lost. Amid the golden shadows, a quiet figure moved with humble grace. A poor maid, her hands roughened by labor, but her eyes glimmering with a quiet fire. She balanced a tray of dates and tea, unnoticed by the court's elite, invisible in the opulence that surrounded her. But beneath her modest guise, a keen mind observed, unburdened by pride or spectacle. She stepped closer, drawn by a fascination she could not name. The Sheikh's gaze flicked briefly toward her, a flash of intrigue breaking his stoic mask. Here, in this palace where fortunes decided fates, was a soul untouched by pretense. A subtle spark ignited between the two, fragile yet electric, as if an unspoken challenge passed in that fleeting glance. The enigma that had confounded 20 experts sat etched on a golden plaque, an ancient riddle carved deep with symbols no scholar could fully decipher. The Sheikh's pride ousted any doubts. He was certain he could unravel its secret. Yet as the maid's slender finger traced the carvings with unexpected confidence, time itself seemed to hesitate. Then, impossibly swift, her eyes flickered with understanding. One simple whisper, one quiet declaration, and the room's heavy silence shattered. The poor maid had solved the impossible, her answer swift, flawless, leaving the billionaire Sheikh rooted in stunned disbelief. Shock washed over him like a desert storm. Pride warred with awe. Arrogance wavered before humility's sudden light. The puzzle was not merely solved. The entire world he had known trembled. In that instant, the luxurious palace felt smaller, the vast emirate quieter, as something far deeper than intellect began to stir between them. What secret lay hidden beneath her modest exterior? What mysteries did her humble life conceal? And more horrifying, how could he, the mighty Sheikh, be undone by a maid? Before the next secret of this vast emirate unfolds, make sure you are part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be written, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Leave a like if the heart of this sheikh has already intrigued you. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you following this saga, and what twist do you think awaits us? Your passion for these dramas inspires us to keep going. Thank you for being with us. The Billionaire Sheikh's disbelief hung in the air like an unspoken storm, the weight of the Maid's solution reverberating through the opulent hall. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. His sharp eyes locked onto hers, searching, questioning, grappling with the undeniable truth she had revealed. This was no ordinary servant before him. The trembling in his chest was not of weakness, but of astonishment. Years of dominance and invincibility had left him unprepared for this vulnerability. The idea that a humble maid, untrained and unnoticed by the court's finest, could unravel a puzzle that had confounded the greatest minds in his realm. His pride battled fiercely with a growing respect he dared not yet acknowledge. She stood poised, her hands still trembling slightly from the pulse of revelation, but her gaze held steady. The flicker of confidence in her eyes challenged the cold formality of the court, igniting whispers among the nobles who dared to glance her way. The golden chandeliers above cast their light unevenly, highlighting the rift forming between the sheikh and his advisors. "Explain," he commanded, his voice firm but laced with an unfamiliar curiosity. She stepped forward, the soft rustle of her modest dress almost swallowed by the cavernous hall. Her voice was calm, resonant, a stark contrast to the tension that crackled like wildfire around them. She traced the carvings with delicate precision, her fingers gliding over the ancient symbols as if they whispered secrets only she could hear. "It's not just a puzzle," she said slowly. "It's a story, a warning. Those who tried and failed overlooked the entire context. The symbols aren't separate riddles, but verses of a single truth. They speak of a betrayal long buried, hidden within the shadows of this emirate." A murmur swept through the assembled nobles. The sheikh's dark eyes narrowed, a mixture of intrigue and wariness surfacing beneath his harsh exterior. Betrayal, the word sliced deeper than any blade. "Go on," he urged, his facade of imperious authority cracking just enough to reveal a flicker of vulnerability. Her voice, soft and unwavering, she began to unravel the tale etched in gold. Many years ago, long before these halls recorded history, a pact was broken between two powerful families. Their scars remain hidden, but the consequences shaped this land's destiny. The puzzle conceals the name of the betrayer and the price of silence demanded in exchange for peace. The sheikh's heart pounded faster, an icy certainty seizing his thoughts. Could this secret be tied to his own lineage? His ancestors governed these sands with authority, yet he sensed a shadow cast over his bloodline that he had never dared to confront. "Why have you kept silent?" he demanded, the richness of his voice betraying an edge of accusation. The maid's gaze dropped briefly, but she straightened, defiance gleaming through her humble exterior. "Because the truth is dangerous. Because power silences the weak. But today, the trap has been set right under the nose of those who believe themselves untouchable." A sudden ripple of unease radiated through the court. Whispers turned to guarded glances. The noble advisors exchanged worried looks as the implications settled like dust around their feet. The luxurious walls, steeped in centuries of opulence, felt suddenly claustrophobic and charged with hidden menace. The sheikh stood abruptly, the long folds of his royal robe sweeping the marble as he paced toward the maid. His intense gaze searched for answers and perhaps forgiveness. For the first time, he saw beyond riches and power to the vulnerability beneath his own mask. "You've risked everything by revealing this," he said, voice low and commanding, yet tinged with reluctant admiration. "Who are you to wield such knowledge?" She met his gaze unflinchingly, the fire in her eyes reflecting years of hardship and secret strength. "I am no one, and yet I am the one who will decide the fate of this emirate if you do not listen." The moments stretched, suspended between threat and alliance, power and humility. The halls seemed to close in, pressing the weight of destiny upon them both. From nowhere, a shadow detached itself from the darker corners of the room, a figure draped in silks, whose smile was as sharp as the desert night's chill. The sheikh's most trusted confidant, yet known for secrets of her own, stepped forward. "You tread on dangerous ground, girl," she warned, voice smooth but cold. "This palace does not forgive those who threaten its foundations." The maid lifted her chin, undeterred. "And this sheikh is not the enemy, yet." Her tone held a provocative promise. The sheikh's glance flickered between these two women, the servant who unraveled the impossible, and the confidant who guarded old wounds. A storm was brewing, fierce and unrelenting, beneath the shining veneer of sand and gold. Heart pounding, the sheikh's mind raced through a maze of possibilities. This challenge was no longer just about a puzzle. It was about survival, loyalty, and the burdens of legacy. The fragile thread binding his empire was unraveling before him, tangled in secrets long concealed behind walls of silk and gold. A sudden urgency seized him. "Tell me everything you know," he demanded, voice sharp enough to cut through the thickening tension. "If this betrayal is buried within my realm, then it is my fight to unearth it." The maid's eyes softened ever so slightly, the spark of alliance kindling between them, despite the gulf of status and history. Before either could speak further, a distant echo shattered the fragile silence. An urgent whisper carried on the warm desert wind. A new message, delivered by a shadow from beyond the palace gates, was soon to reveal a truth that would change everything. And in that breathless instant, the billionaire sheikh realized this was only the beginning of a battle far greater than any puzzle. A secret so devastating hid in plain sight, and its unveiling would threaten to unravel not only his empire, but the very core of his heart. The tension in the grand hall tightened like a drawn bowstring, every eye fixed on the unexpected protagonist, the poor maid whose whispered solution had shattered the illusion of invincibility that the billionaire sheikh clung to, his breath hitched in a mixture of shock and reluctant admiration. How could this woman, so modest in dress and demeanor, wield the power to unravel secrets that elite minds had long failed to decipher? His empire, His legacy rested precariously on the edge of revelation. The flickering chandeliers above cast shimmering light that caught in the sheen of the Sheikh's robe, every thread woven to display dominance, yet his posture betrayed a quiet turmoil. The palace, with its marble floors and silk drapes scented with rare oud, had never seemed so silent nor so claustrophobic. Power, once a shield, now felt like chains tightening around his chest. Her steady gaze held his, unyielding but not defiant. The hall buzzed with whispered speculations, nobles tightening their jaws, sensing the shifting tides beneath the gilded surface. "You speak of betrayal," the Sheikh murmured, voice low but furious beneath the calm. "A shadow looming over centuries, over my own bloodline." He took a step closer, the anticipation coiling inside him like a desert storm. "Tell me precisely, who broke this ancient pact?" She traced her finger along the carvings once more, the symbols now alive beneath her touch. The betrayer's name is concealed deliberately, masked by layers of silence and fear. But the consequence is clear. The blood spilled and the price paid were meant to protect the empire, at a cost no one dared name. Her voice trembled with the weight of a secret too heavy for her shoulders, yet borne with unwavering resolve. The Sheikh's eyes darkened, the ruler within battling the man exposed to a truth he had never welcomed. "And you, why risk this revelation? What do you stand to gain?" She swallowed hard, her heart thudding with a fierce urgency. "I stand for those who have no voice, for the truth buried beneath lies and opulence. This secret will not bury us all, not if I can stop it." Her words hung in the air, fragile yet potent. A rustle disturbed the uneasy stillness as the Sheikh's confidant stepped forward, wrapped in silks that whispered with every movement. Her smile was sharp, knife-like. "Such boldness," she said, voice silk over steel. "Do you truly believe your simple truths can topple centuries of power? This palace will swallow the naive and spit out those who dare defy its shadows." The maid's eyes flickered, defiant flame against a storm. "The palace corrupts, yes, but true strength lies not in silence, but in courage to face what we fear." The Sheikh's gaze flicked between the two women, one embodying the palace's formidable legacy, the other a spark of rebellion threatening to ignite a tempest. His mind raced, his heartbeat loud in the cavernous room. "Enough," he commanded, voice heavy with command and a hint of exhaustion. "Bring the council. We will confront this shadow, piece by piece." His statement held finality, but beneath it, a tremor betrayed the weight of uncertain futures. As servants hurried to prepare, and the nobles exchanged wary glances, the maid's eyes locked once more with the Sheikh's. The gulf between them, wealth, status, past grievances, seemed to narrow, bridged by the fragile thread of alliance and necessity. Late into the evening, beneath golden lantern light, softened by fragrant smoke, the Sheikh and his unlikely advisor pored over ancient texts and scrolls. The room hummed with a strange intimacy, a forbidden closeness, blossoming amid candlelight flickering against carved wood and velvet cushions. The Sheikh's hand brushed against hers briefly as he reached for a script, hesitation catching in that fleeting contact. Neither withdrew. Between them, unspoken questions tangled with a growing respect. This maid, who dared expose secrets that could shatter empires, had ignited something deeper. Within the once unshakable billionaire, outside the desert night wrapped the palace in a velvet cloak, the stars indifferent witnesses to the unfolding drama. But inside, destiny hurried forward, propelled by courage and whispered truths. Suddenly, the heavy doors burst open, and a breathless messenger appeared, clutching a sealed letter, his eyes wide with urgent warning. "Your Highness," he gasped, "a threat approaches, one born not of this kingdom, but rooted in old vendettas and vengeance." The Sheikh's dark gaze sharpened, the puzzle evolving beyond riddles and history into a dangerous game of survival. He rose, regal power flooding back, tempered now by the fragile hope that trust, however unexpected, might be their saving grace. He turned to the maid, now more than a mere shadow in his kingdom. "Prepare yourself," he said. Softly, for what comes next will test us all, not only as ruler and servant, but as two fragile souls bound by fate. Outside, the desert winds howled, carrying whispers of war and secrets yet to be unearthed. Within, the gates of his heart cracked open, unsure if love or destruction awaited. The letter slipped from the messenger's grasp, and in the dim glow, a single word burned bright: betrayal. The heavy oak doors slammed shut behind the breathless messenger, leaving the grand hall suspended in a thick, charged silence. The sealed letter trembled in his clenched fist, a tangible weight of threat that seemed to darken the golden light spilling from the massive chandeliers above. The billionaire Sheikh's dark eyes narrowed, his formidable presence anchoring the room, even as the winds of uncertainty twisted through the opulent chamber. The maid's steady gaze never wavered, though her fingers curled tightly around the hem of her modest dress. She felt the invisible chains of centuries-old secrets tightening about them, and yet, beneath the palace's glittering facade, a pulse of defiance grew. This was no longer about riddles carved in gold. It was about survival of the emirate, of legacies, and perhaps the fragile bond now forming between two unlikely allies. The Sheikh stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "What does the message say?" The messenger's voice trembled as he unfolded the letter, revealing scrawled words penned in an earnest, urgent hand. "Betrayal does not rest. It moves in shadows, seeking the weak. Your enemies come cloaked in the guise of friend and fortune." A cold wind seemed to seep through the polished marble floors, carrying a whisper of distant danger. The Sheikh's chest rose sharply, the weight of responsibility settling heavier than ever. This was no mere threat. It was a summons from a past long buried, and a challenge for the present. The maid's dark eyes flickered with a knowing fire. "We are no longer dealing with puzzles or ancient warnings," she said quietly. "This is a war of secrets, and the battlefield is our own home." The tension coiled tighter, twisting through the room like desert sand drawn into a fierce storm. Whispers from the courtiers ebbed and flowed, their expressions shadowed by uncertainty. Yet, beneath the shimmer of jewels and silks, the air felt irrevocably changed. The Sheikh's hand brushed against a gilded column, as if rooting himself against the sudden swell of emotion. For years, He had ruled with unchallengeable power, an empire built on fear, wealth, and unyielding will. Yet now, the iron mask of the billionaire sheikh trembled against a rising tide of vulnerability. Could he face a betrayal so deeply embedded within his own bloodline? He turned sharply to the maid, stepping into the space between them, the distance charged with everything unsaid. You risk everything by sharing your truth. Tell me, what lies beneath this so-called betrayal? Her breath caught for only a moment before she spoke, her voice a quiet but potent force. Legacy is both gift and curse. The pact broken centuries ago was sealed to protect many, but it demanded silence at a price paid in shadow. The betrayer is no mere myth. They are closer than we think, perhaps wearing a mask of loyalty even now. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. The sheikh's fierce gaze sharpened to a cutting edge. And this council? What role do they play in concealing or confronting this threat? Are they allies, or part of the web that binds us? Before the maid could answer, the palace doors stirred again, and the sheikh's confidant swept forward, her presence as commanding as ever. Her gaze was an unreadable blend of steel and silk. Power invites danger, Your Highness, but danger within your home is the most perilous. Trust is a weapon, and betrayal its cruelest edge. The maid's eyes locked with hers, flames meeting frost. Trust built on fear and silence is fragile. Only truth can strengthen it, even if that truth threatens everything you hold dear. A charged silence followed, broken only by the distant murmur of the desert night, faint but persistent through the open windows. The sheikh's mind raced, torn between old loyalty and the dawning knowledge that change was not only inevitable, but demanded. He spoke again, voice steady but laced with urgency. We must uncover the betrayer's identity before their shadow consumes us all. Every ally is a question, every secret a thread. Prepare the chambers for a council at dawn. No one is to leave until this matter is resolved. As the nobles dispersed, murmuring with uncertain resolve, the sheikh remained rooted beside the maid. The flicker of candlelight danced across her determined face, and for the first time, he recognized the fragile strength that defied the palace's grandeur, a strength he needed but feared. Minutes stretched between them, filled with the subtle soundtrack of distant footsteps, the whisper of silk brushing against marble, and the unspoken acknowledgement that their fates were now entwined. The sheikh's voice softened, almost a confession beneath the authority. We stand on the edge of a precipice. If this betrayal is as deep as you claim, then it threatens not only my empire, but what I am becoming. The maid's eyes shimmered with empathy and resolve. Then let us face it together. For whatever lies ahead, it will test us, not as master and servant, but as two souls bound by a fragile hope. A slow, deliberate knock echoed through the hall, as if the very walls themselves summoned them back to reality. The sheikh and the maid exchanged a glance, a brief, electric moment of unity before the storm to come. The gilded doors creaked open once more, revealing a shadowed figure draped in midnight silk, their presence a silent promise of secrets yet unveiled, and dangers far beyond riddles or whispered warnings. And as the desert winds howled outside, carrying the scent of impending change, the billionaire sheikh felt the first shiver of surrender, not to defeat, but to a battle that would demand every ounce of power, passion, and trust he could summon. Because in the heart of the empire, the true enemy was no longer hidden behind puzzles or silence. It was breathing close, watching, waiting, ready to strike, and no one was safe. The messenger's words had barely settled like dust in the grand hall when the atmosphere thickened, as if the very air conspired to suffocate the opulence surrounding them. The sheikh's dark gaze bore into the trembling figure before him, searching for truths and betrayals tangled beyond words. Outside, the desert wind whispered through the open windows, carrying a promise of storm and change. The maid stood unwavering, though beneath her calm exterior, her heart thundered like the beating of war drums. Her secret was no longer hers alone. It was now the burden of an empire poised precariously on the edge of ruin. The sheikh's voice, usually steeped in iron command, softened with reluctant gravity. "Show me what you have uncovered. No more riddles." She moved with quiet determination toward a broad table laden with ancient scrolls, their fragile edges curling under the weight of forgotten history. Her fingers traced the faded ink, reconnecting scattered pieces of a story long buried. The carved symbols on the golden plaque were but the surface. Beneath them lay a tapestry of deceit, of families sworn in blood and shattered by ambition. "The pact," she began, voice threaded with both reverence and warning, "was forged to protect our people from ruin. But peace came at the cost of silence, a silence paid for in blood and fear. The betrayer lives still, hidden in plain sight, weaving webs of influence among those we trust." The sheikh's brow furrowed deeper. He stepped closer, the golden folds of his robe shimmering like liquid fire beneath the hall's glowing chandeliers. The weight of his ancestry pressed down on him, each name a stone on his chest. Was this shadow cast by his kin? His lineage, once a source of unshakable pride, now felt like a fractured reflection. "Who is this betrayer?" he demanded, his voice low, simmering with a mix of rage and desperation. "What name is whispered behind closed doors?" Her eyes met his, fierce and steady. "I cannot say, not yet. But the signs are unmistakable. A friend turned foe, cloaked in loyalty, but driven by greed. And they will strike again, to keep their secret safe." The sheikh paced, restless, his mind a whirlwind of suspicion and strategy. He glanced at the gathered nobles, their faces masks of polite concern, and wondered how many wore smiles concealing daggers. The palace's grandeur suddenly felt fragile, a gilded cage where power danced dangerously close to ruin. His confidant stepped forward, her presence sharp as a blade's edge. "You would give your trust to this maid? To unearth the poison that runs through the veins of our house?" "Be cautious, Your Highness. Alliances are forged as easily as betrayal." The maid's voice rose, steady and clear, cutting through the murmurs like desert lightning. "Trust has been twisted into chains that bind us to silence. If we do not confront this darkness, it will consume everything. I offer truth, not betrayal. A tense silence fell, broken only by the soft clinking of bracelets as the confidant folded her arms. The Sheikh's eyes flickered between the two women, the fierce servant bearing the weight of hidden knowledge, and the loyal guardian of fragile order. Finally, the Sheikh's voice broke the quiet, resolute but burdened. At dawn, a council will convene. No secret will be left unspoken. If betrayal festers in this palace, we will expose it before it poisons the heart of our empire. As the nobles murmured assent and withdrew, the Sheikh remained beside the maid, their breaths mingling in the heavy air of the chamber. The desert night cloaked the palace in cool shadows, but the flicker of candlelight between them burned with a newfound, fragile hope. He reached out, his fingers brushing hers, an unspoken pact between two souls, bound by fate and circumstance. In that fleeting touch, years of pride and loneliness melted into a shared resolve. Suddenly, the silent tension shattered once more as a low murmur rose from the entrance. A courier, his face pale and covered in desert dust, hurried toward them. His breath came in ragged gasps, eyes wide with urgent news that carried the scent of doom. "Your Highness," the courier gasped, "the enemy moves faster than we anticipated. A fleet approaches from the south, silent but deadly. Their banners bear the emblem of the fallen family, the very name your ancestors sought to bury." A cold chill ran through the Sheikh's veins, despite the desert's heat, and the room seemed to narrow, the grand hall shrinking under the weight of the news. He stared at the maid, the fire in her eyes now matched by the storm raging in his own. "Prepare yourself. The war has come, not one of swords alone, but of shadows and blood." His voice was a storm barely contained. The maid's breath hitched, then steadied as she met his challenge. "Then we will fight, not just for the throne, but for truth, for justice, and for the legacy that must not die." Outside, the desert wind howled, carrying the cries of unseen forces marching toward the heart of the empire. And deep within the palace, as the first stars blinked cold and distant overhead, the Sheikh realized the true battle was only just beginning, and it threatened to consume all he loved, including his heart itself. The heavy weight of the sealed letter hung in the air, its ominous message echoing through the vast marble hall like thunder rolling across desert dunes. The billionaire Sheikh's gaze was unwavering, sharp as the blades hidden beneath his silks. The word betrayal burned in his mind, searing away any illusion of safety within. These golden walls. Beside him, the maid's steady eyes reflected not fear, but a fierce determination, born from nights spent weaving through shadows. Her presence, once dismissed as mere servitude, now seemed as vital as the very pillars that upheld the palace. She was no longer invisible. She was a storm, quietly gathering at the heart of his empire. The Sheikh took a deliberate breath, forcing air through a chest tight with conflicting emotions. The courtiers whispered behind fan folds, their eyes darting with suspicion and unease. Within their ranks, the enemy could be hiding, or worse, thriving. "Prepare the council at dawn," the Sheikh commanded, his voice low, but carrying the weight of desert sandstorms. "Every secret will be unearthed, every loyalty tested. No one leaves this palace until the truth is found. The Maid met his gaze, her expression resolute. If we do not face this now, we become prisoners of silence and fear. He nodded, the first fissure of trust illuminating the shadowed gulf between them. There was a fragile alliance, forged in necessity. Two souls, bound by a destiny far beyond the vast deserts and gilded halls. Late into the night, the Sheikh and his unlikely confidant studied ancient scrolls by candlelight. The flickering flames, casting dancing shadows across their faces. Secrets long buried, promised either salvation or ruin. Each symbol, traced by her slender fingers, seemed to pulse with whispered warnings, each word unfurled, stirring a tempest of memories he had fought hard to bury. As the night deepened, a moment of rare vulnerability passed between them. The Sheikh's hand brushed hers briefly, a silent acknowledgement that beneath the armor of power lay a man haunted by the ghosts of his ancestors and the burgeoning secrets before him. Just as the flickering candle threatened to gutter, the heavy doors burst open once more. A courier, dust-coated and breathless, staggered in, clutching another sealed message. "Your Highness," he gasped, "the enemy advances faster than we anticipated." A fleet arrives from the southern coast, bearing the colors of the house once thought vanquished. But chill raced down the Sheikh's spine, cold as the desert night's unforgiving silence. The past, long buried beneath layers of power and wealth, was clawing its way back with merciless intent. Turning to the Maid, the Sheikh's eyes blazed with renewed resolve. This is no longer merely a game of shadows and riddles. It is a war waged for the very soul of our empire. Her breath caught, but steadied, mirrors of steel and fire shining between them. Then we prepare to fight, not only with force, but with every truth we uncover. The chambers buzzed with tension as courtiers prepared for the council that promised to strip away the gilded facades they hid behind. The trusted confidant paced silently, her eyes cold, calculating the paths betrayal might take next. The Maid stood still, her heart a battleground where fear and courage clashed like storm winds sweeping the dunes. When dawn finally came with its pale light, the grand hall thrummed with the clamor of anticipation. Faces, once cordial, now wore masks taut with suspicion and suppressed anger. The Sheikh's voice rang clear, slicing through whispered rumors. "Tonight we unravel the lies that bind us. Every shadow shall be illuminated. For the fate of this emirate, we must see beyond loyalty and death." Throughout the assembly, the Maid observed the flicker of recognition, the crack beneath false friendship, the thin edge where a smile masks a dagger. During a brief pause, their eyes met again. In that charged silence, the gulf between master and servant narrowed, uncertainty weaving threads of fragile hope. Yet, despite unity forged in fire, the Sheikh's heart clenched. There was a darkness deeper than conspiracy, lurking in the depths of his bloodline. A secret not yet spoken, not yet named. The faint creak of the eastern doors turned every gaze. A figure stepped forward, cloaked in midnight silk, face obscured, but eyes gleaming with cold purpose. The hall sucked in a sudden breath of stillness, the room's golden hues dulled by the shadow's presence. The Sheikh's voice dropped to a whisper, both challenge and warning entwined. "Reveal yourself." The figure's lips curved into a slow, cruel smile, as a silver dagger gleamed faintly beneath the folds of her cloak. "Your past is not as buried as you believe," she murmured, voice silk over poison. "And the price of silence is yet to be paid in full." A slam echoed as the grand doors closed behind her. The golden light dimmed to a suffocating dusk, the oppressiveness of the palace's luxury swallowed by the wilderness of betrayal. The Sheikh's dark eyes locked onto the Maid's, seeking strength, certainty, something to anchor his unraveling world. In that suspended heartbeat, he realized a profound truth. The enemy was no longer a distant threat. It was inside, breathing, scheming, and ready to strike. And this time, the game was no longer puzzles or riddles. It was a war for the soul of the Sheikh, the Maid, and the fragile empire that bound them both. The grand hall, heavy with anticipation and veiled secrets, seemed to hold its breath. The air carried the lingering scent of oud and cedarwood, mingled with the faint echo of whispered rumors, swirling like desert dust through the gilded corridors. The flicker of candlelight danced nervously against the intricate carvings on the palace walls, casting long shadows that flickered with unspoken truths. The billionaire Sheikh stood rigid, his cloak pooling elegantly at his feet like a cascade of molten gold. His dark eyes burned with a fierce intensity, tracing every detail of the sealed letter clutched tightly in his fist. The message's chilling warning, betrayal, had shattered the fragile calm, igniting a storm beneath his composed exterior. Beside him, the Maid's steady gaze did not falter. The humble servant, whose presence had already unraveled ancient riddles and stirred dormant loyalties, now embodied both defiance and fragile hope. Her fingers trembled slightly, betraying the weight of the unspoken burdens she carried, yet her posture remained resolute, a silent vow that no longer even the vast palace could contain. "They move swiftly," the Sheikh spoke, voice low but commanding, cutting through the thick tension like a hunting falcon's cry. "This threat is no longer hidden behind riddles or forgotten pacts. It rises now as a shadow creeping toward the heart of our empire." The Maid stepped forward, her voice calm yet edged with urgency. "The fleet that approaches carries more than warships. They bear the legacy of broken promises, the fury of old vendettas sown deep in our soil. The enemy is closer than we thought, wearing faces we once trusted." The Sheikh's eyes narrowed, the weight of ancestry and responsibility pressing down upon him. The grand hall, once a sanctuary of power and opulence, now felt like a battlefield trapped beneath endless arches of marble and crystal. "Prepare for the council at dawn," he commanded, the timbre of his voice demanding obedience yet shadowed with exhaustion. "Every lord, every ally, or enemy, will answer for their loyalty. Deceit will no longer hide in the gilded halls." The murmurs of nobles intensified, but the Sheikh's focus remained unbroken. His gaze softened for an unguarded moment as it met the Maid's. Barely a touch of warmth flickered amidst the cold storm gathering in their world. The chasm between wealth and servitude, between history and the present, seemed to narrow, bridged by the shared peril. In the quiet that followed, footsteps echoed in the marble corridors as courtiers hurried to their chambers. The flickering lights revealed the sharp outlines of the Sheikh's trusted confidant, her silk-clad figure moving like a shadow wrapped in secrets. Her eyes, cold and assessing, met the maid's with calculated appraisal, an unspoken challenge suspended between them. "You do not understand the depth of these waters," the confidant whispered, her voice silk laced with steel. "These conspiracies run deeper than you imagine. One misstep, and you will drown beneath the waves." The maid's lips pressed into a thin line, resolve hardening her features. Better to face the storm than be crushed beneath silence. The Sheikh's breath hitched as he watched the exchange. The fragile alliance stretched taut, threatening to snap. Yet beneath the elegant facades and whispered threats, something irrepressible stirred. A possibility that survival might demand a unity born of trust, no matter how uncertain. Night deepened, cloaking the palace in velvety darkness, pierced only by the light of scattered lanterns. Within the Sheikh's private chamber, the air buzzed with urgency as ancient scrolls and maps were spread across polished ebony tables. The maid leaned close, fingers tracing faded inscriptions that whispered of forgotten wars and hidden enemies. His hand brushed hers, a fleeting contact that sent an electric shiver through the charged space. Neither withdrew, the silent acknowledgement passing between them. A melding of duty and an unspoken yearning that both frightened and emboldened. "Your courage is a flame in this desert of shadows," he murmured, voice rough beneath the veneer of command. She met his gaze, eyes fierce and unwavering. "And you, the storm that must be tamed." Outside, the desert wind rose, serpentining through the palace gardens, stirring the jasmine and palm leaves with a restless sigh. The night held its breath, as if the very earth waited for the next move in the deadly dance unfolding within those walls of gold and secrets. Suddenly, the heavy doors slammed open, flinging a burst of cold air across the chamber. Another messenger hurried in, face pale and dust-streaked, clutching a fresh scroll sealed with the royal insignia. "Your Highness," he gasped, voice strained with urgency. "Reports from the southern coast. Forces loyal to the fallen house have landed. Their banners burn bright beneath the moon, and their march advances without mercy." The Sheikh's jaw clenched, veins taut as steel cables beneath his skin. The very enemy his ancestors had buried in history was now raising the present, threatening to engulf all he had built. He turned to the maid, every flicker in his dark eyes revealing the tempest within, the fierce determination of a ruler forced to confront not only battle, but his own unraveling legacy. "This war is no longer distant," he breathed, tension spiraling in every word. "It is at our gates, at our doorstep, and in the shadows of these very halls." Her lips parted, caught between fear and resolve. "Then we shall fight, not only for the land, but for truth, for the future that must not be lost." The room seemed to contract, the weight of unsaid truths pressing heavily, when suddenly a sharp metallic sound clipped through the silence, a dagger sliding free from its sheath. Heads snapped toward the eastern door, where a figure emerged, cloaked in midnight silk, face obscured, but eyes gleaming with cold, lethal certainty. Her smile was a blade itself, sharp, unyielding. "Your reign was built on secrets," she said, voice a whisper that rippled like poison. "But every secret crumbles when the time to pay the price comes." The Sheikh's breath caught, every muscle coiled for the inevitable reckoning. And in that moment, as the shadow stepped fully into the light, the Billionaire Sheikh and the Maid both understood. The true battle was no longer about mystery or legacy. It was about survival. The enemy was within, closer than ever, and the heart of the empire beat precariously on the edge of a blade. The grand hall exhaled a heavy silence that seemed to seep into every marble surface, every golden filigree. The word betrayal lingered like a venomous cloud, suffocating the opulence with its ominous weight. The Billionaire Sheikh's eyes, dark as the desert night, pierced through the flickering candlelight, sharpening with an edge honed by years of power and control. Yet beneath that ruthless gaze flickered a new ember, uncertainty. A crack beneath his carefully forged armor. Beside him, the Maid stood immovable, a solitary beacon of defiance. In the swirling storm, her modest dress whispered modesty, but her eyes held a fierce rebellion that neither silk nor jewels could silence. Her fingers traced the edges of an ancient scroll laid atop the ebony table, the fragile parchment bristling with secrets waiting to be unearthed. Every symbol, every faded word, pulsed with a history soaked in blood and broken promises. The Sheikh's voice broke the silence, low and tight with restrained urgency. "This fleet, this force bearing the banners of our enemies, it is not just a threat to my throne. It is a challenge to everything I am." She met his gaze steadily, breath steady, despite the weight now pressing on both their shoulders. "They come with fire and vengeance. But the greatest weapon lies not in their armies, but in the lies that have festered among us for centuries. Trust has been our empire's shadow, and it is about to consume us." His hand clenched into a fist, the golden rings on his fingers catching the candlelight like shards of a broken crown. The grandeur of the palace suddenly felt suffocating, a gilded prison where whispers held more power than swords. His mind raced, turning over a labyrinth of possible traitors, former allies, and enemies cloaked behind smiles. How many of those seated in his councils were puppets in this dangerous game? How many had already surrendered to greed and resentment? A sudden movement drew his attention. His confidant, the woman draped in flowing silks, stepped forward with a cool, calculating smile that hid more ambition than loyalty. Her eyes locked with the Maid's, two opposing forces poised on a razor's edge. "Your Highness," she murmured, her voice as soft and dangerous as desert sand slipping through fingers. "The threads of this conspiracy run deeper than any of us imagined. Be wary. The truth you seek may undo more than just your enemies." The Maid's lips pressed into a firm line. "Then we must choose, survive the lies or be swallowed by them." Her words hung suspended in the heavy air, weighty with a promise and a warning. The Sheikh's gaze shifted between the two women, each embodying a different fate for his empire and heart. For a fleeting instant, vulnerability cracked his imperious mask. Could he trust the voice of a servant when the halls echoed with deception? The murmur of approaching footsteps reverberated sharply, setting nerves on edge. A courier burst into the chamber, dust clinging to his sweat-dampened brow and desperation gleaming in his eyes. He brandished a fresh scroll sealed with the royal insignia, his breath ragged. "Your Highness," he gasped, "the southern coast falls under the shadow of enemy flags. The fleet has landed. Their banners burn under the moon, bearing the crest of the very family your ancestors tried to erase." A cold shiver sliced through the Sheikh's spine, despite the desert's relentless heat. The ghosts of an ancient war stirred violently, awakening wounds thought healed. He turned sharply toward the maid, eyes blazing with a tempest of emotions, fear, fury, and something dangerously close to hope. This battle is no longer one of secrets or shadows. It is here, at our gates, in these very halls. Her breath hitched, then steadied. The room shrank to the space between them, charged with unspoken promises and shared peril. Then we fight, not just for survival, but for the truth, and for whatever future remains to be claimed. Outside, the wind swept across the dunes, relentless and unforgiving, whispering warnings of the storm to come. The Sheikh moved to the carved wooden table once more, hands tense as he sifted through parchment and ink, seeking answers in histories long buried. The maid leaned closer, her fingertips lightly brushing his, a spark igniting between them, fragile yet undeniable. Neither pulled away. "Your courage kindles a fire where only shadows lived before," he murmured, voice softer now, barred for reaching others, but not her. She met his gaze with fierce conviction. "And you, a storm that refuses to be tamed." Silence engulfed them briefly, broken only by the distant rustle of silk and the faint trickle of water from a nearby fountain. The palace no longer felt impregnable. It trembled on the cusp of upheaval. Suddenly, the massive door creaked open once more. A figure stepped inside from the shadows, cloaked in black silk, face hidden, eyes gleaming with merciless intent. The air thickened as the presence claimed the room, a living menace woven from past and present. The Sheikh's voice dropped to a whisper, sharp and dangerous. "Reveal yourself." The shadow's lips curved into a knowing smile, cold and cruel. "You have built your reign on secrets, but every secret demands its price." A silver dagger gleamed briefly in the dim light, a silent promise of pain, betrayal, and reckoning. The Sheikh's chest tightened as his gaze locked onto the maid's. In that moment, the fragile alliance fortified itself in the face of darkness. His empire, his heart, and his very soul teetered on the edge of a blade. The real enemy was no longer a distant threat. It moved within, breathing, scheming, waiting to strike. And as the shadow stepped fully into the light, the billionaire Sheikh understood with bitter clarity. The war for the soul of the emirate had only just begun. The golden glow of dawn spilled gently into the grand hall, painting the marble floors with soft light as the palace slowly stirred from its troubled night. The storm that had raged within these walls, the threat of betrayal, war, and whispered secrets began to fade, replaced by a fragile peace, meticulously won through courage and resolve. The billionaire sheikh stood tall, his cloak no longer a shield of cold power, but a mantle softened by understanding. His dark eyes, once fierce with suspicion and guarded pride, now held a quiet warmth as they locked with the maid's steady gaze. Together, they had faced shadows deeper than riddles, and enemies cloaked not only in silk, but in family ties. "I will no longer be prisoner to silence," he declared, voice resonant with newfound conviction. "The trust we build today will be the foundation of a future stronger than any empire built on fear." The maid's lips curved into a gentle smile, the fierce fire she carried, now tempered by hope and belonging. "Truth is the light that will banish every shadow, Your Highness. We stand united, not as master and servant, but as two souls bound by truth and destiny." Their alliance, forged under the weight of betrayal and danger, had transformed into something unbreakable. The council chamber, once heavy with suspicion, was now a place where confessions freed the oppressed and where lies succumbed to the power of honesty. One by one, the nobles who had hidden behind gilded masks came forward, unveiling secrets and seeking forgiveness. The conspirators, exposed by the unwavering courage of the maid's revelations and the sheikh's decisive justice, faced the sheikh's stern judgment, but also a chance for redemption. Within the echoes of confessions and absolutes, the sheikh found a burden lift from his shoulders, a release from the chains of inherited guilt and fear. He had inherited not only a throne, but the duty to heal wounds once hidden beneath layers of power and cold pride. Outside, the desert breeze stirred the jasmine and palm leaves, carrying the scent through open windows and across the courtyard, where the sun climbed steadily to claim the sky. The world felt renewed. Later, beneath the blossoming garden's vibrant shade, the sheikh and the maid stood side by side. The garden, an oasis of peace amid an often brutal desert, mirrored the transformation within them both, delicate yet resilient. Flowers stretched their petals toward the sun, as if celebrating new beginnings. He reached for her hand, once hesitant, now firm and sure. His touch spoke of promises kept and hearts healed. "Your strength has taught me what power truly means," he breathed, a softness lacing his tone that no wealth or title had ever coaxed before. She met his gaze, unafraid and radiant. "And your heart has opened a place where trust and love can grow. No longer walls, but open doors." Their smiles blossomed as the morning sun bathed their faces, casting long shadows behind, but heralding an era built on these very foundations: love, truth, and courage. The empire which had once seemed a gilded cage was now a realm filled with possibility, where justice reigned as fiercely as mercy, and where old wounds promised to heal beneath the steady gaze of a ruler who had chosen redemption over wrath. As the first guests gathered in the light of day to celebrate the new dawn, the sheikh took his place, not above them, but among them, as a leader transformed. Beside him stood the woman who had challenged tradition and shattered illusions, a partner, equal not only in secret knowledge, but in shared hope and vision. The palace walls, once silent witnesses to betrayal, now echoed with laughter and music, signs that the darkness had finally lifted. Far beyond the marble and gold, a desert stretched vast and eternal, its endless horizon a reminder that every ending was but a beginning. And in the heart of the emirate, beneath skies vast and forgiving, the billionaire sheikh and the maid found not only peace, but a love as enduring as the dunes, ready to weather any storm the future might hold.